Someone has asked, and perhaps you are asking this yourself, what is the relationship between thought and consciousness? And crucially, why do we seem utterly unable to go beyond this incessant movement of thought? It's a profound question. And before I go any further, I must ask you, and I ask myself, are we truly serious about this inquiry? It's a word we use so lightly, serious, but I mean it in a very particular, very total way. I don't mean being long faced or morbid, but rather having a totality of intention, a willingness to follow this question all the way to its end, wherever it may lead, even if it undermines the very foundations of who we think we are. In a world that is built on distraction, on the endless scroll of information and entertainment, on the next fleeting pleasure or the next ideological battle, to be serious means to be willing to put all of that aside just for this moment in order to look at something that is extraordinarily difficult to see, the very nature of our own minds. So let us be serious together. The question itself, what is the relationship between thought and consciousness, already implies something, doesn't it? It implies that these are two different things, two separate territories, and we are trying to draw a map between them. But are they different? Or are we being tricked by the very language we are using to ask the question? Let's investigate this. We must first consider what thinking actually is. This whole movement of thought upon which we have based our entire lives, and I mean entire, just look at our world, look at your own life. Everything we have built, our towering cities, our complex global economies, our political ideologies that we fight and die for, our intricate religious structures with all their dogmas and rituals, and even our most intimate personal relationships. What are they if not the product of thought? The plan to build a house is thought. The law written in the book is thought. The memory of an insult from last week is thought. The anxious projection of what might happen tomorrow is thought. Our conduct, our activity, our whole way of life is based on this movement. It's not just intellectual, our emotions, our sentiments, our myriad reactions, and the recognition of those reactions. This is all part of the same stream. And then, what is this consciousness we talk about? When we use the word, we generally mean the capacity to be aware of something, to be conscious of the tree, of the pain in our knee, of the person sitting opposite us. It's the ability to recognize, to understand, to have a whole field in which the mind, with all its thoughts, operates. This seems to be the common understanding. So the questioner wants to know the relationship between the thinking and the field in which it seems to happen. But I ask, can we separate the two? Can we separate the stream from the riverbed and still call it a river? Let's look even more closely at thought. Where does it come from? What is its source? Surely, thought is born from knowledge, isn't it? And knowledge is the child of experience. This is a very simple, mechanical fact. You have an experience, let's say you touch a hot stove. That experience creates knowledge. Stoves can be hot and cause pain. That knowledge is then stored as memory. The next time you see a stove, that memory provides a reaction, a thought, be careful. or that is a store. So the entire chain is experience leading to knowledge, which is stored as memory, and the response of that memory is what we call thinking. This means thought is a material process. It's happening in the brain, in the cells, as a physical, chemical, electrical impulse. And because it is born of experience and knowledge, and because our experience and knowledge are never complete, you can never know everything about anything, not even a single flower it follows, doesn't it? That thought, by its very nature, is always limited. Thought is the past. It is the past reenacting itself, projecting itself, modifying itself, but it is always the past. It can never, ever be new. Now, let's bring this understanding back to consciousness. What part does this limited, past based thought play in our consciousness? What is our consciousness? I hope we are really thinking this through together, not just passively listening. Our consciousness is, if you look at it, all the knowledge we have accumulated. It is all our experiences, not just our personal, private experiences, but the collective experience of our family, our culture, our species. Is filled with genetic responses. The accumulated experience of generations upon generations. It contains all the travail, all the human trouble, the anxiety, the deep-seated fears, the fleeting pleasures, the dogmas we cling to, the beliefs we are willing to kill for, the attachments that cause us such pain, the deep, abiding sorrow of life. All of that is our consciousness. I don't think anyone can seriously doubt this. You can add more things to the list, your ambitions, your envies, your hopes, or take some away, but it remains the same. The content of our consciousness is built by thought. Someone might come along and say, but there is a super consciousness, a higher self, an Atman, or some other spiritual concept. But isn't that too just another idea, another concept created by thought, which, feeling itself trapped in limitation, projects a magnificent, limitless ideal outside of itself? It is still part of the same field. So look at what this consciousness does. It is in constant movement, and its primary movement is to break itself up. It creates the you and the me. It creates my nationality, my country, which, when combined with our incredible technological development, is becoming a tremendous existential danger to the entire planet. Nationalism is just a projection of thought, of the me writ large. This consciousness creates my religious beliefs, my dogmas, my rituals, which separate me from the person with your beliefs. It's my psychological wounds, my ideals, my constant, desperate struggle to become something, to become more successful, more enlightened, more secure, more me. All of this is the content of our consciousness. And the vital point to see is that this is not your private, personal consciousness. It is the consciousness of mankind. Because wherever you go on this planet, a human being in China or Russia or America or India, he or she goes through the same sorrow, the same agony, the same doubt, despair, depression, the same great uncertainty and insecurity. And because of that insecurity, We are all clinging desperately to some image, some belief, some person, some flag, some book. This is the shared being, the shared consciousness of humanity. Therefore, the conclusion is inescapable. Our consciousness is its content. I hope we are meeting each other on this point. It's not that you have a consciousness which contains these things like a box containing different objects. You are these things. Your consciousness is its content. Without that content, what is consciousness? Is there anything there? Is there a consciousness that is totally different from this field of thought? To even approach that question, to even find out if there is such a thing, one must first find out if thought itself can end. I don't mean temporarily, not that convenient little gap you sometimes hear about between two thoughts, a brief silence, or an unconscious pause. I mean, can this entire chattering, projecting, dividing, image making machinery of thought come to a complete voluntary end? This has been the central problem for most serious religious people, for those who have gone into meditation very, very deeply. They have all tried to end thought. Can this energy, which is so enormously powerful, an energy that has been built up over millennia, the energy that built the pyramids and also built the concentration camps, the energy that writes beautiful poetry and also creates devastating wars, the energy in the scientific field, the economic, the religious, the social, the personal, can all that activity come to an end? Which means, really, can this consciousness, which is its content, can this whole structure which we call me come to an end? And perhaps an even more pressing question comes before that. Why do we want to end it? What is the motive behind this desire to end thought? Is it simply because we have discovered for ourselves, not as an idea but as a living fact, how thought creates this enormous trouble, how it brings a great deal of anxiety about the future and regret about the past, and so we are never living in the present? Is it because we have seen how thought brings about this sense of utter isolation, this profound loneliness, even when we are surrounded by people? Have we seen the shadow of thought, the conflict it breeds? Is that why we want to end it? We must be extraordinarily clear, therefore, about this question of motive, because if we are not, we will be deceived by our own minds. The why of our asking, the reason we seek an end to thought, will inevitably dictate and direct the entire journey, coloring every perception along the way. If my motive is to escape from the pain of my loneliness or to find a permanent state of peace because my life is in chaos, what am I actually doing? I'm still thinking, I'm still operating within the field of gain and loss, of effort and reward. Thought has created the problem, my loneliness, my anxiety, and now thought projects a solution, an ideal called peace or silence, and it begins to move towards that ideal. This is just the same old pattern, isn't it? It's the me trying to become something else, trying to become not lonely, not anxious, enlightened. This is still the movement of becoming, which is the very essence of thought and time. So, a mind that is seeking a result, that has a motive, is already caught in a trap of its own making. It cannot possibly find out what lies beyond thought because it is using thought as the vehicle to get there. And so because our motive is to get something, to get peace, to escape our anxiety, to find a permanent state of bliss, we immediately begin to search for a method, don't we? We look for a system, a technique, a new form of meditation, a promise from someone who says, I have achieved it and I will show you how. We download the mindfulness app that promises to tame our monkey mind in 10 easy minutes a day. We follow the influencer, the modern day guru on social media, hoping their system will be the one that finally works, while the original gurus, the Buddhas and the Christs, are relegated to just another image on the wall. This search for a system is the most natural thing in the world for a mind that is seeking security. But look at what happens. The questioner asks if we can end thought, and I ask, are you seeking a system of meditation, a practice which you will follow day after day so as to end thought? If you are, then I must point out something very simple. If you practice day after day to end thought, that very practice intensifies thought naturally. Why? Because you have created a practicer, an I, a me who is going to practice. This me is thought. This me is the past, the center of all the memories and experiences. So thought is now using this new game, this spiritual practice, to strengthen itself, to give itself a new identity as the one who is practicing to end thought. It is a marvelous trick and we fall for it endlessly. This is how illusion is born. One can live in an illusion that thought has come to an end. Many people do. They have a particular experience, perhaps through a method, through drugs, through fasting, or through sheer exhaustion, and for a moment the mind is quiet. Then thought rushes in immediately and says, I have achieved it. I have had an experience of silence. But that statement, that recognition, that memory is thought. The illusion is merely another projection of thought which desires to end itself but is incapable of doing so. It has simply created a more refined, more spiritual cage for itself. So, realizing the whole complex problem of this thought and the things that thought has built as consciousness with all its content, we must ask again, what is one to do? I hope we are meeting each other on this point because it is crucial. One realizes the nature of thought, its superficiality, its clever intellectual games. One sees how thought divides the world into nationalities, into religious beliefs, which inevitably breeds conflict. Conflict is all we know, isn't it? A perpetual conflict from the moment we are born until the moment we die. Conflict within ourselves, with our families, between our ideals and our actual lives, and conflict in the world at large. Is that the reason we want to end thought? Because we are tired of the pain, tired of the battle. If the speaker says thought can end, what value has that for you? I will tell you, none whatsoever. It would just be another belief for you to collect another piece of second-hand information. But if you realize for yourself the nature of your own consciousness and see this movement of thought as a material process, can you observe it? And this is the real crux of the matter. How do you observe? Can one observe the movement of thought, not as an observer who is different from thought? Are we following this? This is where the inquiry becomes extraordinarily subtle. Can we go a little bit into this together? Normally, when we observe, there is a division. I say, I am watching my thinking. That is a fairly easy, common experience. I separate myself as the I, the observer, and I watch my thoughts go by as the observed. This is what most of us do, or try to do, in meditation. But I ask you, is this division real? Is it not illusory, fallacious? Because who is the observer? Who is this I that is doing the watching? Is the thinker different from his thought? Let's look. The observer, the thinker, is the past. He is the accumulation of all your remembrances, your images, your knowledge, your experiences. He is the center, the me, the censor, the judge. This I is the repository of the entire past, of all the content of consciousness we were just discussing. So the center, this observer, looks at a reaction and immediately names it. A reaction arises, and the observer says, that is greed, or that is nationalism, which are really both the same, a form of more. The very moment the observer names that reaction as greed, what has happened? By naming it, he has already classified it, judged it, and most importantly, separated himself from it. He has established it in the past based on his prior knowledge of what greed is. I am not greed. Greed is this unpleasant thing that I must control. I don't know if you are following all of this, but it is the entire basis of our inner conflict. This division between the observer and the observed is the entire structure of our inner conflict. We have lived with it for so long that we accept it as normal, as inevitable. We say, I am greedy, but what we actually mean is, there is I, the permanent observer, and there is this temporary unpleasant feeling called greed, which is visiting me, which I must get rid of. This creates an immediate battle. The I must control, must suppress, must rationalize, or if the feeling is pleasurable, must pursue it. But what we have failed to see, what we have failed to investigate directly, is that the observer is the observed, the thinker is the thought. There is no you separate from your greed. In the moment of that reaction, you are greed. There is no you separate from your anger, you are anger. The controller is the very thing it is trying to control. When you see this, not as an intellectual concept, because that is just another trick of thought, but when you see it as an absolute living fact, as clearly as you see the chair in front of you, something extraordinary happens. The entire dynamic of control, suppression, and escape simply ends. It must end. Why? Because the conflict, the battle, requires two separate things, the I and the not I, the controller and the controlled. When you realize deeply that they are one and the same movement, the battle is impossible. You cannot do anything about greed, because the very you that wants to do something is the greed itself, just wearing a different mask, the mask of virtue, the mask of the one who wants to be free of greed. So, can one observe without the past, without the observer? Can one observe a reaction without naming it? The naming, as we saw, comes from the past. It is the immediate act of recognition and classification by the observer. But what happens if you just watch this reaction, this energy that arises, with a pure observation in which there is no division? In that state, there is no observer and no observed. There is only observing. There is no thinker and no thought. There is only thinking. There is no experiencer, no experience. There is only experiencing. In this state, what takes place, are you following this? Are we moving together when there is no recognition, which is the act of bringing the past to the present? The reaction flowers and having no ground in which to take root, which is the me, the past. It withers and dies. Let's make this very, very simple. Take a tree. Can you observe that tree without naming it? Can you look at it not as an oak or a pine, not as something to be used for timber or to be admired for its beauty, which are all concepts from your memory, from your knowledge, but just to observe it? In that moment of pure observation, the division which the word creates, the word tree, which is loaded with all your botanical knowledge, your past experiences with trees, your judgments, that division ceases. The psychological, neurological response which creates the space between you, the observer, and that the tree comes to an end. Now, this doesn't mean you mystically become the tree. I hope not. That is just romantic nonsense. The physical distance remains, but the psychological distance, the distance created by thought, by the word, by the past, that distance is gone. Or take something far more complex and emotionally charged. Can I observe my wife, if I have one, or my husband, or my friend, or anyone, without the image? Because, you see, we don't actually have a relationship with the person. We have a relationship with the image that thought has built about that person. This image is the accumulation of all our shared remembrances, all the pleasures, the comforts, the insults, the hurts, the anxieties, the flatteries, the past sexual experiences. All of it. This image is the past, and it is this image that I, who am also an image, have a relationship with. And that is why our relationships, which may start with such life, so often become a dead, repetitive routine, a source of endless conflict and pain. We are two images built from the past, interacting with each other, while the living beings are hidden somewhere behind that wall. So, can you observe that person purely, to look at them as if for the first time, without the word wife or husband, and without the entire memory of your past relationship interfering? That pure observation is complete attention. It is an attention in which there is no center, no me who is paying attention. There is just attention. And in that state of total, choiceless attention, has not thought come to an end? It must have, because thought, as we saw, is the past. Thought is the memory. Thought is the image. Thought is the observer. When there is only pure observation, the entire machinery of the past is silent. This requires a great deal of attention, not the forced concentration of a mind trying to achieve a result, but a close, step-by-step watching, like a good scientist who watches very, very carefully, without any bias, without wanting the experiment to go one way or another. When one does this, and you can only do it for yourself, no one can give it to you, one will find, if one goes into it pretty deeply, that thought does come to an end. And therefore, time has a stop. This is the crucial point. Thought is time, isn't it? Thought is a movement from the past, memory, experience through the present, which it uses as a naming, judging, classifying conduit to the future, the projection of an ideal, a fear, an ambition, a hope. This entire psychological movement of what was to what will be is psychological time. It is the movement of becoming. But when thought in the state of pure attention comes to an end, then psychological time, the time of sorrow, of fear, of becoming, has a stop. This, to me, is real meditation. It is not all this self-centered, self-hypnotic stuff that goes on in the name of meditation, the pursuit of experiences, the repetition of mantras, the following of systems. This is real meditation, to see the movement of thought for thought, to see its own movement, how it arises, how it creates the image and then pursues that image or runs away from it. And to observe all this so completely that there is no recognition, no naming, no past. When you see this, truly see it, you are at the end of the question.